Running away from the FBI at just 16 years old with a huge MySpace following and stolen aeroplanes, to Snapchat clues and money laundering fake gurus, here are some of the FBI's most wanted influencers. Beginning with Chad Hauer, a man who used TikTok to apparently save his own son. In 2001, Chad Hauer and his former wife decided to part ways. Being a free man, Hauer seized an employment opportunity far away in Europe. Meanwhile, the couple's son, Aries, remained in Tennessee under the care of his mother. According to Hauer's accountant on his website, Hootie's World, Aries' mother continuously disrupted his scheduled visitations with his son, and even hid the young boy from him on multiple occasions. Finally, in 2005, after numerous warnings from the judge, custody was granted to Chad. Aries then joined his father overseas. However, whilst he might have thought he'd won the war, and that he and his son could finally live in peace, all hell would soon break loose. Shortly after she lost custody, Aries' mother took up residence in Pennsylvania and filed kidnapping charges against Hauer. In June 2006, Hauer accompanied Aries to the United States for a summer visitation with his mother until school resumed in Cyprus, where they were residing at the time. Little did Hauer know that he would never step foot in the US again. The father and his son parted ways in Boston, with Aries escorted to Cleveland to meet his mum, and Hauer traveling to Seattle for work at Microsoft. By August, his mother, according to Hauer, refused to return Aries at the end of the summer break. It ultimately required a court order to compel her to comply. A judge from Pennsylvania upheld the Tennessee ruling and ordered her to get the young boy on a plane back to Cyprus, and so she did, reluctantly so. But rather incredibly, in November of 2006, the very same judge, the one that had just ruled in the father's favor, was also involved in fabricating false kidnapping charges against Hauer, despite having full knowledge of Aries' whereabouts in Cyprus. As per Hauer, these supposedly baseless accusations were later escalated to federal kidnapping charges through a secretive process conducted by a federal grand jury. The FBI strategically, according to the disgruntled father, publicized this information to sway public opinion in their favor, resulting in widespread coverage by various media outlets. And again, rather incredibly, Hauer was oblivious to all of this, but that would change in 2009, while on a business trip in Bulgaria, where he would soon be arrested by a group of Interpol agents, all of whom were armed. Subsequently, over the course of 3 months, Hauer was incarcerated in a total of 5 Bulgarian prisons. Shuffled from place to place, his mind completely scrambled by the insanity of what was occurring. Since then, he suggests that he has been caught in a bureaucratic ordeal with FBI agents, prioritizing protecting themselves over finding a resolution. The US government has attempted to extradite him twice from different countries, but their efforts to date have been unsuccessful. But before we continue, I want to tell you about our video sponsor, Cook Unity. Cook Unity is a unique chef collective that's all about bringing the creativity and diversity of the local culinary scene right to your doorstep. Cook Unity is not just another food delivery service. It's the first chef-to-consumer platform that delivers meals prepared by award-winning chefs from across the US directly to you. Imagine having a personal chef preparing your dinner, except now you have over 50 of them. The subscription is super flexible. You can choose from 4 to 16 meals a week. Completely flexible and commitment free. You can skip deliveries, pause or cancel at any time. It's so useful for saving time, as planning out your meals each week can be such a hassle and extremely time consuming. Not to mention that each meal is a testament to the chef's creativity, made from fresh, seasonal produce sourced from local suppliers. We're talking about healthy, balanced, and incredibly delicious meals that start with the best ingredients out there. I've been trying out Cook Unity for a while now, and it's been absolutely amazing. Last night, after working all day, I was able to enjoy the lamb curry meatballs with lentils, crafted by the amazing chef Michelle Williams right out of Chicago. Getting started with Cook Unity is simple. You set your preferences, choose from hundreds of meals tailored to your taste, and boom, your meals arrive fresh, not frozen, with easy heating instructions. And what I love most about Cook Unity is the sheer convenience and the quality of the meals you get for the price. Starting at just $11 per meal, you're getting restaurant quality dishes without the hassle of meal planning or cleanup. So if you're looking to shake up your meal routine with some culinary excitement, I've got a great offer for you. Head over to cookunity.com/mooncrime50 or click the link in the description below and use my code mooncrime50 to get 50% off your first order of Cook Unity meals. During the first extradition attempt, Hauer claims on his site that the false evidence against him involved the false testimony of his ex-wife, who appears to have a history of lying under oath. After Europe, Chad then relocated to St. Kitts and Nevis, a beautiful tiny country located in the Caribbean. At the time, the US didn't have an extradition treaty with the island nation. And there's even a website called Alex Is Not Missing, which states that despite his mother visiting him in 2009 in his home country of St. Kitts, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children continued to list Alex as missing until 2022. even though he was already 26 years old. It was only after Chad posted a critical TikTok video about NCMEC that the poster was finally taken down. In recent times, Hauer has used TikTok to tell his traumatizing tale, hence his title, The TikTok Fugitive. Importantly, according to the TikToking renegade, his son is very much alive and just chooses to have nothing to do with his mother. In other words, he's not missing, he's just missing from his mother's life. In interviews, Alex has repeatedly stated that the FBI investigation is more akin to a witch hunt than a legitimate case, full of fiction and very little factual evidence. Last year in a podcast interview with Ike Wingate, Hauer, obviously hurt and infuriated by years of cat and mouse mind games, said that the FBI's attempts to extradite him have failed because their claim is not even credible. But why? Why would the FBI go to such great lengths to destroy the life of a supposedly innocent man? Don't they have more important things for doing than ruining the reputation of a rather forgettable middle-aged man? Well, as Hauer told Wingate, members of his ex-wife's family were formerly employed as high-ranking engineers and had access to highly classified Russian military intelligence. The feds, and maybe even the CIA, according to Hauer, wanted to recruit him in order to obtain the price secrets. And again, according to Chad, during his time at Microsoft, he regularly met with high-ranking officials in Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, including members of the Saudi royal family. This, he suggests, may have piqued interest in members of the intelligence community. People in the know, however, refute Chad's claims, suggesting that there's little, if any, evidence showing that the FBI or CIA even attempted to recruit his services. Chad, they suggest, is conflating reality with narratives created in his head, either consciously or otherwise. Whether this is true or not right now, Hauer is no longer living in St. Kitts, as in December of 2023, after years of telling this story mostly on TikTok, Russia granted him asylum. Like Edward Snowden, another man on the run from law enforcement and hiding out in Moscow, Hauer is safe from the feds and Interpol, for now at least. Hauer's story is a fascinating one, but the tale of Colton Harris Moore, another individual who had numerous run-ins with the law, is even more interesting. Born on March 22nd, 1991, Colton was dealt a bad deck of cards in the game of life. His father, who struggled with drug and alcohol abuse, left the family when Colton was just a kid, with a single mother left to raise him alone, with the pair living on Kamino Island, Washington, in a single wide trailer, where they would regularly face financial difficulties, as Colton's mum also battled alcoholism, creating this unstable and even abusive environment for the young boy, who began showing behavioral problems very early on into his life. At the age of just 7, he started running away from home frequently, spending days in nearby forests. To survive, he resorted to breaking into vacation homes to steal food and camping supplies. His first conviction for theft was at the age of 12, leading to more convictions, but it wouldn't be long before he ended up doing time in juvenile detention centers. Colton attended Stanwood Middle School, but was later transferred to Lincoln Hill Alternative School due to a number of ever-escalating disciplinary issues. His troubles continued at Lincoln Hill, and by 9th grade he stopped attending school entirely and eventually dropped out. Child Protective Services visited the family home multiple times due to suspected neglect or abuse, eventually forcing Colton to be placed in temporary foster care. This bad behavior would continue. In July of 2006, a warrant was issued for his arrest again, after he failed to appear in court as required. Upon discovering that he was now a wanted individual, the teenager in fact decided to go on the run. The fresh-faced Rambo established hidden campsites deep within the woods of Kamino Island, breaking into homes to obtain food and supplies, anything to keep himself alive. Some of these homes contained computers, and Colton would use them to educate himself on the art of identity theft. By ordering credit cards under the homeowners' names, he was able to acquire essential items like food and advanced survival equipment, including night vision goggles, which aided him in evading capture by law enforcement. Eventually on February 9th, 2007, Harris Moore was apprehended and taken into custody. Having evaded capture for over 6 months, he now faced a total of 23 criminal charges, primarily related to the residential burglaries. In an effort to mitigate his legal consequences, he struck a deal with prosecutors and pleaded guilty to all 3 offenses. As a result, he received a 3-year sentence at Green Hill School, a high-security juvenile detention facility located in Cialis. During this time, the young guy demonstrated exemplary behavior and proved himself to be a model student inmate. Consequently, he was then transferred to the Griffin Home Residential Treatment Center on February 14, 2008. Situated in Renton, Griffin served as a minimum security halfway home aimed at reintegrating troubled youths into society. However, many speculated that this commendable conduct was just a facade designed to secure transfer to a facility offering superior escape opportunities, and they were right. On April 29, 2008, Colton managed to slip through an unlocked window at Griffin Home. Subsequently, a felony warrant was promptly issued for his arrest. Here he was once more on the run from the law, socks and shoes optional. After escaping, Harris Moore would steal a car and make his way back to Kamino Island, where he continued his pattern of breaking into places to steal food and supplies. This time the local authorities were more prepared and launched an aggressive campaign to capture him. The media then also started covering the story, with news articles emerging about this teenage outlaw, the Jesse James of Kamino. On July 18, 2008, sheriff's deputies pursued a black Mercedes that was driving recklessly, and as the police cars closed in, the driver of the Mercedes suddenly abandoned the vehicle and fled into the woods. Upon searching the car, authorities discovered stolen credit cards, cell phones, and a digital camera with self-portraits taken by the driver himself. Harris Moore was quickly identified in the photos, including one where he is lying on his back in a forest, gazing up at the camera. This iconic image spread widely online, attracting a growing fanbase interested in the ongoing crime saga by this young man. By this point, the 17-year-old fugitive had acquired a nickname due to his habit of committing crimes barefoot and leaving footprints behind. This gave birth to the Barefoot Bandit. But Harris Moore knew he couldn't stay on the island much longer, so he fled, this time on a stolen boat. He relocated himself to a different place known as Orcas Island, located in the Pacific Northwest. Shortly after his arrival in August 2008, the San Juan County Sheriff's Office began receiving an increasing number of reports regarding burglaries, causing widespread concern within the small island community. The situation escalated to such an extent that on October 2, 2008, the Orcas Island Chamber of Commerce organized a special meeting to address the sudden surge of sophisticated break-ins. Law enforcement intensified their efforts to apprehend the individual responsible, who was strongly suspected to be Colton Harris Moore. And by November 12th, Harris Moore made the decision to evade the police by stealing a single-engine airplane from a hangar. Despite lacking any prior aviation experience, he managed to successfully take off from the island and fly 300 miles east. However, without his experience of landing, he ultimately crash-landed the aircraft on the Yakima Indian Reservation, luckily escaping and surviving before the authorities could even arrive. In the brilliant book The Barefoot Bandit, the author Bob Friel discussed how Colton acquired his flying skills through self-teaching, utilizing aircraft manuals, instructional DVDs, and spending countless hours playing Microsoft Flight Simulator. During the investigation, police discovered footprints inside the cockpit, providing a clear indication that the shoeless savant was the likely suspect. Interestingly, the stolen airplane belonged to Bob Rivers, a well-known radio host on Seattle station Kozuk FM. Rivers became aware of the theft immediately after concluding his morning radio show. A year later, while Harris Moore was still on the run, Rivers expressed his frustration regarding the incident, stating to the radio listeners that Colton was no folk hero. He was, in Rivers' eyes, a criminal who needed to be apprehended. Following the airplane theft, Harris Moore continued his spree of stealing cars and constantly moving around, traveling to various locations such as Reno and Sacramento. In the years to come, he would steal yet another couple of planes and spend time in Washington and Illinois before making his way back to Indiana. On July 4th, 2010, his penchant for aircraft theft kicked in again, where he would steal a plane, his fourth one, from an airport in Bloomington, Indiana. This time he had his eyes set on reaching Cuba, due to its lack of extradition agreements with the US government. He managed to make it as far as the Bahamas, where he crash-landed near Greater Cabo Island. Following the rough landing, he sought refuge in a nearby fishing village, sustaining himself by pilfering food from local establishments. However, Harris Moore's run came to an end on July 11, 2010, when he was apprehended at Harbor Island, Bahamas just before daybreak. Thanks to tip-offs from residents, authorities were able to track down the notorious fugitive after he ran a stolen boat aground on a sandbar near the shore. In a precautionary measure, the police disabled the boat's engine and instructed him to surrender. Initially resistant, he put a gun to his head, but eventually relented and gave himself up to the authorities. Following his capture, he would be extradited to Miami and subsequently transferred to the Federal Detention Center in SeaTac on July 21st, where he would remain for 2 years, facing a slew of charges at various judicial levels, after receiving a 7-year state prison sentence. As an additional 6 years from the Island County Court, he was brought before the Federal District Court in Seattle, and on January 27, 2012, a US District Court judge advised Harris Moore to chart a new course in his life, sentencing him to 6 years in federal prison. Expressing genuine remorse for his actions, Harris Moore informed the court of his aspiration to pursue a career as an aeronautical engineer upon his release. After his county, state, and federal prison sentences were merged, he was relocated to the Stafford Creek Correction Center in Aberdeen to commence his 6-year imprisonment. Shortly after his arrival at the correctional facility, he managed to secure a deal with 20th Century Fox, selling the rights to his life story for a substantial sum in the region of $1.4 million. And in the years since, movies and documentaries have been made about his rather incredible life as an old-school MySpace Facebook influencer, allowing the legend of the Barefoot Bandit to live on. Born in 1980 and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, Raymond Abbas came from a very humble background. According to various media platforms, Abbas used to work as a second-hand clothes trader in Lagos. His father meanwhile worked as a taxi driver, while his mother sold bread on the side of the road, struggling to make ends meet. Abbas, however, always harbored aspirations of escaping the slum life and amassing great wealth by whatever means necessary. He soon adopted the moniker Hush Puppy and began his entrepreneurial journey by selling sneakers and clothes from the trunk of his car. As his fashion enterprise expanded, he successfully established multiple boutiques across the city. However, it was common knowledge among the local community he grew up in that Abbas had additional sources of income. According to reports, he was widely known as the Yahoo Boy, a local term for a cybercriminal. In 2014, at the age of just 24, after establishing himself as a minor influencer in his homeland, Abbas left Nigeria for the Malaysian capital of Kuala Lumpur. And this is when Hush Puppy went from being a little petty criminal to one that would eventually make global headlines for all the wrong reasons. You see, all of a sudden, almost overnight, he started amassing great wealth and posted photos to social media. Many of these posts had him wearing ridiculously expensive clothing and posing beside cars that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Back home, he went from being a minor celebrity to a major one. Nigerians were intrigued. Where was the money coming from, they wondered. But KL wasn't big enough for Abbas, a man who had aspirations of becoming a billionaire. So naturally, he moved to Dubai, a place that regularly blurs the line between criminal behavior and wealth acquired through legitimate means. Upon arrival, as reported by Insider, his Instagram page was flooded with more images of numerous luxurious items, including a sleek black Bentley with a starting retail price of $160,000, a t-shirt from the Disney and Gucci collection priced at $650, and a Richard Mille watch valued at close to $250,000. The world was watching, and so too were lots of FBI officers. Soon the whole world would acknowledge Abbas as being one of the most prolific money launderers in the world, as per The Guardian. In 2019, for example, Abbas helped launder $14.7 million stolen by North Korean hackers from a bank in Malta. The Nigerian played a key role in this huge cyber-enabled heist, moving the funds through multiple banks in Romania and Bulgaria. Additionally, he was involved in laundering tens of millions of dollars, stolen from a British company and a professional football club in the UK. Furthermore, he convinced a New York-based law firm to transfer close to $923,000 to a criminal account. Shortly after, he would then participate in a scheme to defraud an individual in Qatar who was seeking a $15 million loan for a school construction project. However, in June of 2020, the walls came crashing down for the criminal. As unbeknownst to the Nigerian, the FBI had been working closely with authorities in the UAE, closely monitoring his activities and social media postings. As part of an operation known as Operation Top Dog, an FBI-initiated project, Abbas was apprehended at his apartment in the Palazzo Versailles, an opulent hotel resort located in Dubai Creek, along with 7 others in a series of coordinated raids. Authorities would then confiscate millions of dollars in cash, 13 luxury cars, 21 laptops, dozens of smartphones, 15 memory storage devices, 5 external hard drives, and close to 1 million emails from potential victims, in addition to suitcases filled with even more cash. Abbas was quickly identified as a significant figure in an international cybercrime network that facilitated the laundering of stolen funds worldwide. All while this was happening, he had almost close to 3 million followers on Instagram by this point. From here, Abbas was quickly extradited to the US, where he would face charges for conspiring to launder hundreds of millions of dollars. Specifically, Abbas was charged by the US Attorney's Office in Los Angeles with conspiring to launder hundreds of millions of dollars obtained through fraudulent activities, such as, quote, business email compromise, BEC scams, and other criminal schemes. And by July 28, 2021, Hush Puppy admitted his guilt in a money laundering case and implicated a man called Abba Kyari, a deputy commissioner of police in Nigeria, as one of his accomplices. The next day, a US court issued an FBI warrant for the arrest of Abba. Obviously, desperate to avoid a lengthy sentence, Abba made a final plea to the judge before his scheduled sentencing in 2022, even writing a personal letter to the court detailing the origins of his wealth, his criminal activities, and at the end, expressing remorse. But he apologized to his family for bringing shame upon them and even commended the FBI for their thorough investigation that led to their apprehension and prosecution. However, justice would be served, with Hush Puppy receiving a sentence of just over 11 years in a US federal prison. But let's end this video on a humorous note. You see, very few criminals are quite as intelligent or as gifted as people like Harris Moore. In fact, some are downright dumb. And if in doubt, let me point you in the direction of Chosen Terrell Hanna. Whereas criminals like Harris Moore were known for committing crimes without shoes, Terrell Hanna would become known for committing crimes wearing a very specific pair of shoes, a pair of Nike tennis shoes with notable red accents. Over the course of 3 months between the end of 2021 and early 2022, a string of armed robberies were carried out across the metro area. On December 1st, a young man dressed in black pants, a black hooded sweatshirt, a black ski mask and white shoes entered the 7-Eleven. Carrying a black backpack covered in pink flowers, he brandished a black handgun, demanded money from the clerk and promptly escaped with the loot. Then on January 13th, a man with a similar appearance and backpack robbed the Marathon gas station in Dearborn, a city in Wayne County, Michigan. Pressing a black handgun against the clerk's back, he demanded money before fleeing the scene. Shortly after, investigators discovered a notable piece of evidence at the scene of the crime, a .40 caliber bullet. Then, on January 26th, a man dressed similarly, and yet again carrying a black backpack with pink flower decorations, went back to the same 7-Eleven with the same intention as before. Although the clerk initially hesitated, they complied when the suspect pulled the gun's slide and put a .40 caliber round on the counter. The burglar, successful in his efforts, swiftly fled the scene. By February 1st, a fourth theft occurred at an Old West tobacco store. Again, the perpetrator was identified as a male individual, dressed identically to the thieves that had done the previous robberies. However, this time, colourful hair was seen slipping out from underneath his black ski mask. An anonymous tip-off pointed police officers in the direction of a Snapchat account named Chosen One, which was later changed to Chosen World. Officers found a TikTok profile owned by Terrell Hanna with an identical name. On TikTok, police officers also found a video of Terrell Hanna with dyed pinkish purplish hair, lip-syncing and dancing wildly. To be clear, Terrell Hanna was lip-syncing and dancing in the very same shoes that he had used during his armed robberies. And so in February of 2022, police officers would find it very simple to arrest him.